Hello friends, Adam here with FED. Today we're going to be looking at sword combat arts, and we're going to be tiering them based on their usefulness. The order in each tier doesn't really matter, I didn't think too hard about that, but I did just try to group combat arts that are similar in usefulness in my mind. So, as I said, in my mind, this is all my opinion, so if you disagree, please let me know in the comments what would you change, because that's what tier listing to me is all about here on the channel. It's not about me telling you what to do or telling you what to think or say. It's about sharing our opinions with each other. So I'm going to share mine, and I hope that you will share yours too. So we're going to start from the bottom and work our way up. So bottom tier, what I consider to be the worst combat art as far as swords go, is Assassinate. It requires 5 uses for a random chance of one-hit KOing an enemy. It really, in my opinion, that's just not worth it. There's so many, much better combat arts in the game that just deal extra damage. And sure, you're not going to get this weird one-off, super crit and kill an enemy in one hit, but the chances of that happening are low. I don't actually know. If anyone knows the actual chances on that, please post them in the comments. I don't know the chances on Assassinate actually killing an enemy in one hit. You know, getting the lethality effect on it. But really, it's just not that useful. I'd rather spend the uses on just dealing more damage and setting up for a kill with another character, or in some instances, just dealing more damage to just get a kill outright. So I don't think Assassinate is really worth it. It is Assassins only, but I'm not really going to take that into account. I'm not going to really put that against it to say you have to be an assassin to use this, so its availability is low. I'm not going to really worry about that too much. But Assassinate's not very good, let's be honest. Alright, so let's move on to low tier. There's only one in bottom tier. I had to make a new tier for it because I thought it was that bad. So our first combat art in low tier is going to be Hazed Slice, which adds 30 avoid to your attack, but it costs 5 uses, and it only adds 2 might. There are other combat arts that add much more might for less use, and really adding a to attacks is only useful really if you already have a really high avoid character. So Hazed Slice, if you have I don't know, a Falcon Knight with, that has avoid plus 10 with the class, and then you have I don't know, sword avoid or something, and then you can use Hazed Slice for extra avoid. This probably, it might be a little overkill on avoid right there, but you're gonna dodge the attack, the counter attack, and it's gonna be useful that way. But overall, I don't think 30 avoid by itself is enough to justify 5 uses of a weapon when there's other combat arts that just are more useful. They deal more damage, significantly more damage, and they cost the same or less. Alright, next for low tier we have Astra, which is the Swordmaster exclusive combat art. It requires 9 uses of a weapon to attack 5 times at 30% damage. So if you do the math and you add that all together, that is 150% of your normal damage that you would do if all five attacks hit and none of them crit. If Astra added crit or something, that would be one thing, but it doesn't. So only dealing 150% of your damage with 9 uses is just stupid. And it's actually minus 10 hits, so there's actually lower chance of hitting than you would like. I could see this again being potentially worth it in the right build. Something with a high crit build and using a Killing Edge or a Wudao or Wudao Plus or something to really amp up your chances of critting. And if you do that, then you get to a point where you're dealing significantly more damage, but 150% of the damage that you would deal from one attack with 9 uses, just horrible. Horrible, horrible, horrible. But that's all I have on that. So let's move to mid-tier. This is our biggest tier. It has quite a few combat arts in it, but I feel like they all kind of fit in the same area in terms of usefulness. So first off, we have Grounder. Now the problem with Grounder is that it's really only worth using if you're fighting a flying foe. Which, in some instances there are some pretty terrifying flying enemies. Think of the Falcon Knights in Chapter 14 on... I think that's every route besides Crimson Flower. Like, those guys are just horrendous, but there's better ways to take care of them, I think, than trying to use Grounder on them, especially since they usually have, and by usually I mean on Maddening, they all have Swordbreaker, so Grounder's probably not your best option. It is useful on flying beasts, though. I will say that. So flying beasts, like particularly like Silver Snow Endgame, there's a lot of the flying dragon people, dragon monster things. If you attack them with that, it'll break one of their guards, one of their little golden squares in one hit. So that's actually really nice. But other than that, it's just super niche. It doesn't add anything that you don't get from something like Wrath Strike, which is basically just Grounder, except always useful, in my opinion. It costs less, and it's stronger. It's just better. There might be some fringe cases where you want the extra 10 hit that Grounder gives. It gives 20 hit, where Wrath Strike only gives 10. But overall, I think Wrath Strike is almost always going to be the better option than Grounder. So I think Grounder is definitely like a mid-tier kind of combat art. Alright, next, Hex Blade. Hex Blade it deals magic damage, so that's good, but it doesn't have any damage modifier, like some other magic-based damage that you can do later on that I'll talk about. And the person who can use, and people who can use Hexblade can't use the other ones, I guess. So like Manuela gets Hexblade but doesn't get Soul Blade, for instance. And Soul Blade is just infinitely better. Not infinitely, that's wrong, but it is just better. I would say Hexblade's like saving grace is that the people who can use Hexblade can't use Soul Blade. So there's not really like comparing them. But overall, Hexblade is just it's mid-tier for sure. It's like good, can deal magic damage you need it to, but it's not going to deal as much damage as other magic attacks. Alright, next we have Beast Fang. And now this is the exclusive combat art to Blutgang, or however you say it, Marianne's sword that she gets after completing her paralog. And that weapon deals magical damage already, and when using this combat art Beast Fang, it's effective against cavalry and dragon foes. Has 10 might, 30 crit, crazy awesome stuff, but it does cost 3 uses on a relic weapon that I believe, I'm trying to think of what ore it needs. I think it's just the standard one, the one that most use to repair, like the same one that use like the Sword of the Creator. For some reason, the name is escaping me. I feel like I can almost picture the name in my head, but I can't say it for some reason. It's a little embarrassing. But so you deal magical damage with like some extra damage on top of it. But in my opinion, like just use Soul Blade. Marianne is the only person who can use Beast Fang, unless you're playing New Game Plus and you give one of the crest items to someone and the Blutgang. But in a regular playthrough, Beast Fang can only be used by Marianne, and she also has Soul Blade, so you might as well just train her up in swords if you really want to do this, and use Soul Blade instead, which will deal more damage. We'll talk about that in a couple minutes. And you can use it with any sword rather than an expensive to fix relic weapon. Okay, next we have Foestrike Strike. It honestly feels like a waste of Thunderband. So sorry, I'm butchering the name on this one. Foestrike Strike is exclusive to Thunderbrand and units who have the Crest of Charon, or Charon, or however you say it. I worked with a lady named Charon, so that's why I said that. It just came to mind. Anyways, so that's exclusive to like who? Obviously Catherine and like Lysithea. Like, what the heck? You're not going to do that. That's pointless. But when it adds 6 damage, 30 hit, and 30 crit for 3 uses, which sounds great, but then you remember that the sword itself only has 30 uses, and it's a brave weapon, you might as well just attack normally in most instances. The 30 hit can be useful, just because Thunderbrand has a lowish hit rate for a sword being only 70%. But overall, just attacking normally is going to be better. But it is really, in all honesty, Foestrike Strike is really strong. So that's why I put it in mid-tier rather than like low tier or something. Because it does have its uses, but it's just, more often than not, you should just attack instead. Next, we have Sword Dance, which is, it gives evade plus 20 and increases damage with your charm. It's locked to Dancer, but that doesn't mean it's not really good. Again, I'm not going to put a whole lot of stock into availability, like where it comes from in most instances. So I think that this could be useful. I think it's similar to some other ones we're going to talk about, where damage increasing with a stat, it just depends on the unit how good that's going to be. Yeah, if you have a unit that has like 50 charm in endgame, that's going to be a nice chunk of damage to add to an attack. But the fact that it's locked behind Dancer and that your Dancer's probably going to be doing other things makes it a little less good, in my opinion. That's one thing that does hold it back. So I'm going to say mid-tier for that as well. Oh, and finishing out mid-tier, we're going to have Finesse Blade. Finesse Blade is similar to Sword Dance, except instead of increasing damage with charm, it increases it with dexterity. It also gives avoid plus 10. I would say one thing that really holds this back is, aside from being learned by only a few people, which again I'm not going to hold against it, all those people that learn it at A rank swords. So it's like a mid to late game combat art that so you won't get use from it early game, but in the end game it can be a nice source of damage. And the units that it is on are going to have high dexterity. It's on like Felix, Petra, Yuri. These units are going to have high dexterity and will be able to deal decent damage with it. So it's good. I think it's close to high tier for me, but it's not quite there. So with that being said, let's move on to high tier. And our first combat art in high tier is Soul Blade. Now, Soul Blade, like Finesse Blade and Sword Dance, deals extra damage based on a stat, this one being Resistance. So why is it not in the same tiers as Finesse Blade and Sword Dance, you ask? Well, it's because it deals magic-based damage. This is super, like, it honestly can be one of the highest damage output attacks in the game if you pair it, if you do it right. You know, you have you have Lysithea with super high resistance, and like Silver Sword Plus using Soul Blade is going to deal stupid amounts of damage. So that's something to consider. Soul Blade can deal tons of damage. So I think just because it deals a lot of damage and attacks on the generally lower defense stat being Resilience, I think it is just a step better than the other combat arts that were increased with damage, increased damage based on stats. All right, next for high tier, we have Bane of Monsters. So, Bane of Monsters, it's effective monster damage, which breaks monster shields in one hit, and it just works really great in the place of a gambit for breaking monsters down. So, if you can like combo with like 4 different characters, you know, have one use, you know, if you have multiple people with Bane of Monsters ready to go, or Monster Piercer, or whatever the other ones are called, then you can break a monster in one turn very safely without having to use a gambit. And that alone's very useful, especially on routes where monsters are more plentiful. Looking at you, Silver Snow. Man, that final chapter, man, gets you. Other than that, it's just 4 uses for plus 6 damage and 10 crit. It's just a lot. It's useful. It's something that can be even used on non-monsters just for some extra damage. Really, really good. All right, and to finish off high tier, we have Sunder. It's very low cost, being only 3 durability, and it adds 4 might, which is solid, and it gives 15 crit. It's just, honestly, it's just really easy to make good use of. It trades off a hit for crit and a little bit of damage with Rack Strike, you know, so like they're both really similar. They cost the same, but you know, just extra crit. I don't know. I was tempted to put Sunder in top tier with the other 2 that are there, but I figured, you know, missing out on that extra damage and the extra hit, which is generally why you use combat arts, is for hit and damage, really hurts it compared to the other 2 that are going to be in top tier. Okay, now we're at the top of the top, the creme de la creme, the best combat arts for swords in 3 houses. So first, let's talk about Ruptured Heaven, and I'm actually going to combine Ruptured Heaven and Sublime Heaven, because aside from a 3 damage difference once the Sword of the Creator is upgraded, they're basically the same. Also 10 crit difference, sorry, I should mention that as well. Granted, it is only on Byleth, but the damage is huge. The damage increases based on magic, which is just great on Byleth, especially if you go down any magic class line, or if even just you sit in an enlightened one, that's going to be great. Deal a ton of damage with it. It's 1 to 2 range. It's the only sword combat art that is 1 to 2 range, which is just great. I'll say that. Like, awesome, awesome stuff. And on top of that, it is the Sword of the Creator can be repaired by resting, which late game honestly is a viable thing to do. Late game, it becomes less necessary to start to do all of the grinding with exploring and everything, with how many, especially once you get to like A+ professor level or A+ professor ranking, then you're able to increase, you just have 10 things you can do. So it becomes less important to do exploring like 2 or 3 times a month. Maybe once or twice a month is fine. So you do have an opportunity to rest if you want to gain uses. Also, you just use Umbral Steel. That's what it is. Umbral Steel to upgrade it, which might be the most common drop from monsters. So, yeah. Super good. And it's only like 3 uses. Yeah, it's only 3 uses. So, there's almost no reason not to use it if it's going to benefit you. If it's going to kill or just line up a kill. So, yeah. It's so good. And now for the best, what I consider to be the best sword combat art. Obviously, I haven't mentioned it yet, so you probably know what it is. Wrathstrike. Extremely useful early game combat art. Plus 5 damage, plus 10 hit. You learn it super early, so D rank swords. Everybody can learn it. And it's just adds reliability to your early game, where especially in maddening is almost necessary to use combat arts to hit reliably. And plus 5 damage is going to allow you to kill without taking counterattacks on player phase. So it's just overall, I think it's just useful throughout the entire game. There's not a single chapter where there's not a single battle where having Wrathstrike equipped on a unit is going to be like, oh, I wish I would have brought something else. Just because Wrathstrike is always going to be useful. Low cost, only 3 durability, and again, just helps with early game reliability, which I think is the hardest part of 3 houses, aside from some maddening endgame areas. But yeah, that's what I think. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. That's my sword combat art tier list. There was one I didn't mention because it's enemy only, so I didn't even feel like it was important, which is Heaven's Fall, only used by Nemesis. So I didn't even feel the need to bring it up. So there's that. If you wanted me to tier that for some reason, sorry I didn't. It's basically Sublime Heaven. So there. But there's my tier list. So leave your thoughts in the comments. What would you change? Tell me why I'm wrong. I'm curious. And yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Subscribe for more content like this. Like the video for visibility, and I'll catch you next time.